Is there something between Yancey and Rosa?
Will the Dragon Queen find her true self?
Will Yancey finally take down Nick and Eve?
And how does Vince Vaughn's comedy translate to a semi-serious role?
Red and Red Real Reviews takes a tropical trip of crime and corruption with Bad Monkey on Apple TV.
Ahoy, ladies! Didn't see you there. Would you guys like to set sail on this ocean of flavor?
Randall, look at eye contact, please. You're gonna be cool, right?
Oh, baby, I'm as cool as the other side of the pillow.
Been staring at this board for days.
When you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die.
Act. Bears eat beets.
My brain is on fire. I'm dying.
I am the one who knocks.
Bears. Beets. Battlestar Galactica.
When they say 2% milk, I don't know what the other 98% is.
It's hard to believe we're even the same species.
You know nothing, Jon Snow.
Oh my god. The microchip has been compromised.
Dracarys.
And welcome back to episode 5. My favorite number.
Oh,
Cinco.
that's
Yeah.
right.
It's my lucky number. I like it. So this will be good. And this is a fun one. So I know you do too. I know we both love Vince Vaughn. So
Yeah. I love his dry humor. His like kind of, but like blunt. Like a lot of times dry humor is very subtle. His dry humor is very blunt. Like he just kind of comes out and says it instead of kind of a slow build up to his
yeah.
punchline.
In his fast talking way too. And it's funny because we've talked a lot about certain actors, how they sort of play themselves. Not that Vince Vaughn is a bad actor, because he's not, but I do feel like there's a lot of his personal personality in his roles, right?
Yeah, I had, ironically enough, I had a conversation about this years ago with a family friend, that Vince Vaughn is always like we think of actors as whether or not they're transformative, like like they become the role. And Vince Vaughn is an actor who is always Vince Vaughn as Vince Vaughn as Vince Vaughn at, like it's always Vince Vaughn just with a different name.
Right. Yeah, we were talking about Luke Wilson or Owen Wilson or somebody, and I would very much put him in the same boat. He kind of plays himself in shows and movies, and that's okay. But I don't know, besides, Vince Vaughn being in this one, what were your first impressions going in?
As I typically do, I like to play ignorant. So I went into this with a fresh face. I didn't even know until it started. I didn't even necessarily know it was a crime drama. I just kind of like, I like Vince Vaughn. It's probably going to be funny, so I'll give it a chance. And then you started watching, you started liking it, so I was like, all right, well, we'll do an episode of it. But I like the fact that, and I mean, you dug up that it was an adaptation, but to me, I didn't know that. Again, going in ignorant. So to me, it felt like a fresh original concept. It didn't feel like a carbon copy Hollywood rollout. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I mean, I think I did know it was, I knew he played a detective. So I was like, I'm there. This is, he's playing.
This is your wheelhouse.
Right. I was like, I'm sold. Hook, line, and sinker. So I saw an ad, and I screenshot all the ads that I see on Facebook so I can remember to watch something. So I think it was a trailer, like a video playing. And I was like, oh, cool. He plays basically himself. He plays a funny detective. I was like, there's a crime that unfolds. Cool. And I saw in the comments, that's where I saw that it was a book, because people were like, oh, wow, I read the book. I'm really excited to watch this. Or people had already seen the first episode, I think, and were saying, oh, wow, yeah, it compares to the book. So that's how I found out it was a book series. And it's really only 2 books. So, I mean, when we're saying series, that's the end of it. So that's the extent of it. So also something to note, it was written and created, I guess he's the showrunner, a guy named Bill Lawrence. who you might not necessarily recognize the name. Maybe you might recognize it in credits, but you'd be like, where have I seen that? So he was the showrunner for Scrubs, which is a very long running show.
Oh.
And
Okay.
he also has a big to do with Apple TV because he co-created Shrinking, which is coming out with a second season soon. Ted Lasso, and I guess apparently he left before the third season, which is why people were saying it wasn't as good because Bill Lawrence didn't have a hand in it. And then, of course, Bad Monkey. And it looked like he did write some of these episodes. So besides being like the creator, it seems like he's actually taking part in the writing process. So aside from Bill Lawrence,
I guess that explains why Zach Braff was in it.
yeah. That explains some things. So any familiar names in the credits, or were there famous faces for you for this? Besides Vince Vaughn, of course.
Yeah, well, it was funny because the first one I noticed was Rogelio, and I couldn't place what I had seen him in, but I know I recognized his face.
Yeah, he definitely looked very familiar to me. And you noted down that Eve and Rosa looked familiar. I did too, and I looked at their IMDb's, and I didn't see them in anything that I recognized. So I'm not sure why they look familiar to me.
Yeah, and I did the same thing. I'm like scrubbing, because like sometimes you recognize somebody, but maybe it was like 10 years ago, so it's not going to be at the top unless it was a big hit. So I'm like scrubbing through, and I'm like, nope,
Nothing was standing out.
Yeah, I'm like, why do I know them? They got to look like somebody else, I would imagine, but like I cannot ever like figure out why a face reminds me of someone, and then I go try to find why, and I can't find it. It's like it's maddening, eternally maddening.
Yeah, and I think the thing with Rob Delaney, who plays Nick, he's normally known as a comedy actor, and he was in a show called Catastrophe on Amazon a few years ago, which was really good. It was only on for a couple seasons. It got canceled. He was really good in that, and I really can't figure out what his claim to fame is before that. I do know he's a comedic actor. I think the thing that, or the person that I get him confused with often, is a guy named Ron Livingston. Do you know who that is?
I know the name. Give me a roll to refresh the memory banks. I know the name.
He's in that show Loudermilk on Netflix.
No.
But also I'm just, everything I'm thinking of, like Sex in the City, this romantic comedy with Brittany Murphy from like 20 years ago. Everything I'm thinking of, you would have no idea about.
That's funny because to me he reminds me of the group of actors that always follows Adam Sandler around.
Oh, like David Spade and Kevin James and that guy, the group of guys.
And, like I can't think of the actor's name. He's very dark tan. He played Dante in Grandma's Boy. And Nick Swartzen. Those guys.
Okay.
They always kind of follow Adam Sandler around, and he reminds me of one of those guys.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's part of that clique, but like that's the kind of aura I get from Rob Delaney, because he had a similar type of thing as the two women, where I see his face, like he looks familiar, but I can't put him somewhere.
Yeah, I'm not even sure, but I do know he's a comedic actor typically, and he did have a little bit more of a serious role in this, being that he played a pretty bad guy.
Yeah.
And then a few other people. The woman who plays Yaya, she's been a working actor for decades and decades. She's definitely been in stuff. I think the more notable thing, which I don't watch or haven't watched, but I know of, is like Touched by an Angel. She was a fixture.
Oh, is that her?
Show. Yes, that's what she's from.
Oh, okay.
She's a huge actor.
Yeah.
She's been around a long time. Then we've got Jodie Turner-Smith. She played the Dragon Queen, and she unfortunately I was thinking of what she's actually been in, and she's not really known for her acting. She is known for being Joshua Jackson's ex. They were
from
together for
from Dawson's Creek,
yeah,
from Mighty Ducks.
they were
Joshua
together for a few years, had a child together, and then split up. And then he was started
Oh,
dating Lupita Nyong'o, and they're not together anymore. So that's unfortunately what she's known for. And then last, okay, I want a serious subject. So I want to talk about Michelle Monaghan. And you might say, why is this a serious subject? So listen,
I'm very curious, especially considering her character in this.
I looked it up when I think they were advertising this show like with Michelle Monaghan, as it was kind of like Vince Vaughn, Michelle Monaghan as like a secondary name on the bill, right?
Yeah.
So when she appeared in that, I think it was the first or second episode, I was just like stunned because I went to Google how old is Michelle Monaghan, because I was like, she's got to be in her 40s or 50s. And I was like, damn, that girl looks good. She's 48. And I don't think, I mean, maybe I could be wrong. Maybe she's had some light work done, but it seems like she hasn't messed with her face as much as the rest of Hollywood has, and people her age. So I think she looks amazing. So my serious argument is, why can't women in Hollywood age gracefully like that? And they would look just as good as her. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, and who knows, maybe it's something like in the secret sauce as far as lifestyle or diet's concerned too. But it was funny because I didn't think that right away, but as the season progressed, I think it was probably when they went back to the cabin with her little love puppet or whatever he was. When they went back there and they're getting ready to dive in, I'm thinking this I'm like, damn, she's been around for a long time. She's got to be in her 50s, and you wouldn't know it. So I looked it up, and yeah, it was like 48 or something. I'm like, all right, all right.
Yeah,
whatever you're doing, girl, keep doing it.
I'm like, you go, girl. You know what? She's to me the equivalent of, we've talked about Amanda from Cobra Kai.
Right. Yep.
He's like an Amanda level, right?
Not as Girl Next Door, but yes.
Yeah, well, not in this.
Similar vein. Sure. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's definitely not in
this. So, I mean, it seems sort of like, to me, like Miami, the Keys, and the Bahamas were kind of characters in the show. There was just a huge presence, and there was a lot of time that they spent on creating the magic of these settings to create this atmosphere, right? You know, talking about how Yancey would grab ice cream with his detective partner, and you know, it would be him sitting in a lawn chair in his backyard, looking at the water and looking at the view. All the local restaurants that he went to when he was food inspecting, you get a sense of what the environment is like, and hanging out with his dad and going to the docks and things like that. And you know, I feel like it was front and center in this show. We've never really talked a lot about locations or settings tons, but this one kind of struck me, and especially with what they were doing with pairing the music to kind of bring the location to life. So I sort of noticed a pattern that they were including Tom Petty songs. So they were doing covers, and Tom Petty is from Florida. Fun fact, he's from Gainesville. So it was like they were creating that, like, you know, Vince Vaughn was always kind of wearing, like, I don't want to say a Hawaiian shirt, but always kind of wearing like, you know, tropical Florida gear. And they were just, you know, lending it to that relaxed, like loosey goosey. Oh, we're casual. Casual, beachy, you know, kind of just bringing out this vibe with the music and using Tom Petty to do that. And I thought every time there was a new cover, I was like, oh, this is cool. I realized what it was. And I've actually never been to any of those places. I haven't been to lower Florida, Miami, haven't been to the Keys, haven't been to Bahamas, but it really feels like I could imagine what it's like never having been there. So did
And
any
you
of
lived there
those
twice.
I know, but not as far down. It was northern Florida. It was Jacksonville. It was Tampa Bay and St. Pete. So yeah, I never lived down that far. So I mean, how did all of that stand out to you with the location and the settings?
As the kids say, hashtag island life. Uh, I think I think that casual aesthetic, it adds to people's kind of longing for a simplicity in life. It's calming, it's appealing living in places that are removed from hustle and bustle of metropolis. I mean, Miami is a very large city, but
Mm,
what people think of Miami is, the beaches, obviously, being right on the ocean, is when they, walking around, engaging in the culture, if that's what, so to speak, uh, they think of you're walking the streets and there's, vendors and food carts and little bodegas and that sort of stuff. So there's something that's even in Miami, which is a large metropolis, there's still something very local about the
mm.
whole environment, aesthetic, whatever you want to call that aura. So, and I think that is calming to people because I mean, I know there are people in society that want a, you know, bang bang, fast paced life, but
Hmm.
as soon as unless anyone not like that's the way and that's what we do, as soon as you're away from that and you encounter an environment that's more calming, soothing, slower paced, it kind of brings your aura back to some sense of peace too.
So you've been to both,
Not to the Keys.
not
I
to the
have been
Keys.
to Miami, but I kind of stayed in the, um, more city. I don't want to say necessarily say urban, but kind of more in the downtown area. Um, but in general that sense of beach, beautiful weather, water, it's soothing and it's slower paced and like I compare, in past gig of mine going out west a lot,
Hmm.
seeing how kind of quote unquote slower life is out there. It's really just a normal pace. It's just not the hustle and bustle of what, we get used to in the Northeast and in the big cities on the West Coast. And there's no need to like hit the accelerator on your life. Just kind of take it all in and enjoy it.
Yeah, and I
Sorry, didn't
think
mean to get deep.
yeah, well, I mean the author is from Florida, and so that's what he writes about. I don't know about all his books if they're like that, but yeah, I mean you can get a sense for he's just that's how he's grown up is in that chill, relaxed, beachy environment.
And
That really came through.
yeah, and the Keys, I mean, the Keys are an extra couple hours down, like from Miami's like not totally at the southern point of Florida. It's kind
Yeah.
of on the East Coast a little bit. So the Keys are a good like hour and a half, maybe 2 hours to get to the southernmost point. So they're very remote. So to me, like I always like, you know, when you go somewhere, eat somewhere local, drink someplace local. So like I like seeing these little like tiki bar things that they're going in, they're talking about the conch fritters.
I was literally just gonna say
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
And like to me that's appealing too, as opposed to seeing shows and films set in big metropolis and they're going to Starbucks or Target and it's like, well, I'm sure somebody kind of greased the tracks for your film. Maybe they threw a couple bucks here or there to, for some product placement, but I can go down the street and go to a Target or Starbucks. I don't need to see it on television.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was, I mean, that was cool to see is just the environment that they were in. So you get a sense for why Yancey is the way that he is. He's a product of his upbringing for sure. And
Hmm.
he's got that Hawaiian shirt. He's just that's who he is. So although he lives a slow lifestyle, he still talks fast. So I mean, I know because it's Vince Vaughn, there was just I literally could have written down every single bit of banter or interaction he said because everything was funny. But um
We could
I
have
mean
made a
I
manuscript. We could have just read the manuscript.
seriously. I think it's common for him to improvise quite a bit, you know, on Wedding Crashers and in those movies
Hmm.
that he was in. I know it's common for him to just do takes improvising. So I wonder if he did on this one. So I know you wrote down some. So what funny moments or lines did you pick out?
I tried to limit myself because I knew if I started writing down everything, that would I'd fill up a notebook of all of
Yeah,
them. So
exactly. I
I
know.
did try to limit myself a little bit.
Yeah.
But the first one that I really had a nice gut roll from is when they're at the little store that Madeline works at after Finney's murdered,
Mm.
and you know, of course, the mafia guys kind of they don't necessarily get along, but you know they're questioning Yancey's questioning Madeline because she's you know maybe there's a drug deal in the past or whatever. And she goes, "I'm not a drug dealer. I sold K&E but never H." And Nancy just looks at her and goes, "This is starting to sound like a weird episode of Sesame Street."
Like brought to you by the letter
Yeah,
K.
yeah. Brought to you by heroin. Yeah.
See, I wonder if that's just something he like. I wonder if that was written or if he just came up with something like that because I could see him
It,
coming up with something like that.
you do wonder. You do wonder.
And what were some of your other ones?
There's one where he like him and Mendez. That was one of the interactions that is like kind of a subplot to the whole series. Like his his transgressions with Mendez keep coming up at periodic
Mm.
points. But like it starts off because he was trying to uncover him as a dirty cop, and at one I think it was when he's got him in the cell finally. And there's like it's like you know it's kind of like one of those things where two people start fighting and then they fight for so long they don't remember how the fight starts. Like no, I remember
Yeah.
how the fight started. You were trying to uncover me as a dirty cop. Well, it's like you were a dirty cop. You're as dirty as a sock on the highway. And he goes, "That's not an expression." And he just says, "Well, nothing's an expression until somebody says it." And they're like, "True." And I noticed later on, "dirty as a sock on the highway" comes up later in the show.
Oh,
Forgot,
really?
yeah, I forgot where exactly it was, but he did say it later on.
Oh man. Yeah, there were just so many for me it was like kind of moments, I guess, more than lines. Like I really enjoyed Bonnie's character a lot, like because she was so cray cray that that's dredging up an old. I haven't heard anyone say cray cray in like 5 years,
That is an old one. Yeah.
right?
No,
It's
not
an
now
old
it's
one.
just Cray. Now it's just Cray. She
Yeah,
Cray.
she cray. And it's funny because, you know, Michelle Monaghan has been in romantic comedies and usually she's kind of like a straight woman character. So for her to be just so wacky and like an absolute train wreck was actually really enjoyable for me. Like she was just so nuts.
A whore. You could say
And
a whore.
yeah, she was nuts. The moment when she was happy to be arrested, like that was freaking hilarious. I
That
loved
was
it.
great. And that tied back to the whole Evan Shook thing. Another character that Yancey has a constant, you know, I don't want to say regurgitating, but like his interactions with Evan Shook are like constantly like inserted at random points in the film. That was another one. So for her moment to get arrested to be when she burnt down his house,
Yeah, yeah,
it's like, oh,
yeah.
this is perfect.
Yeah, it was like Evan Shook was like his nemesis kind of.
Yeah, he was just like get out of here, you know.
Yeah, what was you had an Evan Shook line.
I did. I mean, really, they were any interaction between the two of them, like with the deer,
Yeah.
when he's wasted from the night before and he crashed in the house and he's showing the house and he's like, oh yeah, it's like slept down in the mold last night or whatever he said. Like but the one I really liked is of course now that they've got the APB out on Yancey and Evan Shook's like, oh, I'm gonna get him now. He sees him in the house because Yancey goes back to the house and he looks like what? What? So he runs outside, takes the phone, chucks it in the ocean. He goes, I hope you have the find your phone feature. And then the guy, not even pissed about the phone, he goes, dude, I just got a chick's number. I hadn't backed it up yet. It's like this guy, he's like completing the caricature of this douchey, sleazy real estate agent.
Yeah, like type A kind of.
Yeah. I never got down on the anagram thing. I don't even know what I am.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, what else? What else? There was one thing I kind of wish we got more of was a little bit of like the bromance between Neville and Yancey that kind of began
Yeah.
when they met on the island and towards the end. And I loved the moment with Yancey was about to grab Eve and he says to Neville, he's like, I'm gonna give you the sign. And doesn't he he kind of itches
What's
his
this? I'm gonna
nose and
come.
then goes like
No.
this.
Yeah, yeah. And he goes, "What's this? I'm gonna come." No, I could just be scratching my nose. What's
Yeah.
this? I'm gonna come. No, I could just be brushing my hair.
No, he's like, I have to do this and this.
Yeah.
Like, and that whole moment was just hilarious. So I wish we got more of that little bromance.
And they teased us. They teased us with their relationship too, because the narrator is kind of uh guiding their lives as two ships in the
Mhm.
night for the first two episodes, and they're hour episodes. They're not, they're not necessarily something to quick binge through.
Right.
Um, so he's kind of narrating over them together, and I'm sitting there through the first couple episodes, and I'm thinking, these two have something to do with each other. Like, when are they going to meet? And then when they finally did meet, it was very brief, and then it took a few more episodes for them to get back together and actually start with their own plot. So it's kind of like we were kind of teased, and so it's like, look, these are two likable characters. We know they're gonna have something to do with each other, but the show won't tell us what.
Right. It was only, I think, the last one or two episodes where they were together and had met up. And speaking of togetherness, so Rosa and Yancey. So there was when they were on the island, they were posing as a couple, with that pilot of Nick and Eves they were talking to, and they were actually like fighting, which was funny because it was believable. Like they're posing as a couple, but they were actually arguing. So I thought that dynamic, I forget what the name was. They were introducing themselves. They just
Fleeter something.
Leaderman or
Jordan
something like that.
Jordan Fleeterman or something like that.
Yeah. There's like,
And
oh, we're the Fleetermans, or it just, and then they were bickering. So he was like, oh geez, I don't want to get in the middle of this.
when he was like, "Oh, I'm from Chicago," and you may think, "Oh, I'm named that for Michael Jordan," but I'm actually named that for my grandmother because it's a unisex name.
Yeah, and so you had a Yancey and Rosa moment.
This was one of my other real, like, kind of guttural laughs watching it, is when they're going to Rosa's family's house, and she already knows that her family's not going to approve of this. So Yancey goes like, "Did you tell your mom about us?" And he goes like, and she goes, like, "That we fucked in the morgue 18 hours ago? No, I did not tell her." He goes like, "You're right. She probably come from me." It's funny because there's a sense of traditional relationship there, because
Yeah.
the man's supposed to ask the woman out, the man's supposed to propose for marriage, so it was kind of like, you're right, she probably come from me. It was kind of like a little hint of traditionalism as well.
Yeah, that was I love their dynamic, and it was interesting when they went to her family's house, and then he's dealing with her dad, and um her dad's like, oh, do you want to grab a beer? And he's
Mhm.
like, oh sure. And then they're like, you're supposed to help out, like they were ranking on him for sitting there having a beer or wanting to have a beer with the dad instead of helping them with the food or helping them out.
Yeah, and you would think like, okay, that may be believable, because you could see how, like, the girl brings home a new guy, and the dad kind of wants to be cool and hang out, and
Yeah.
the mother's working on supper or cleaning the kitchen or whatever. Like, what are you doing? Get off your ass.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was an interesting setting where it was just chaos, but it was fun to watch. So I mean, with all this being said, I generally enjoyed the show. Don't get me wrong, but for me, I remember I think it was somewhere like two-thirds through. I started getting to like episode 6 or something, and I was like, it's like, damn, when are they gonna take Nick and Eve down? Like it just seems like when is the finale? I was like, are there like 2 more episodes? And I looked and I saw that there were 10 episodes, and I'm like, really? I don't think this is necessary. It kind of seemed like maybe it was the second, third, fourth. It was kind of within there. It's not that things dragged because the episodes weren't slow or boring or anything. It was just that nothing really furthered along that much. It was just a lot of time was spent like in the same spot. So in my opinion, I feel like this 10 episode season, or I don't know if it's going to continue, but we'll talk more about that later. But I think it easily could have been done in 6 or 7 episodes, like just trimming the fat off. You mentioned that the episodes were sort of long. So was there anything that you weren't really interested in? Did you think, some of this stuff didn't need to be covered to that extent, or anything you didn't like?
And I have to give you a visual first because as you're
Uh-oh.
describing that, I'm thinking you're the cartoon figure with the stick at the plot. Come on, do something.
Yeah.
The pacing, I had issues with the pacing as well, but I didn't necessarily have a problem with it in terms of the amount of episodes as
Mm.
much as how long each episode was. To me, especially because it's very comedic based, to me, I thought this is a show that could have been done in 30-minute episodes. Like, I mean, when we
Yeah.
compare it to another detective show on Apple that we watched, Sugar, that was a lot more of a serious context, and they got that done in 30 minutes. And I can't imagine the difference is comedy taking longer because comedy does not take.
Yeah.
Like there were little things like Donald. Like every time I saw Donald, I'm like, hey, it's Donald. But was Donald really necessary? You know, and things like I know you said you enjoyed the Bonnie arc, but it also kind of felt like it was operating out here for the chunk of the middle of the
Yeah.
show. Like it was at the beginning it was good because it kind of sets up Yancey's chaotic life, but to follow Bonnie's arc around to me it didn't seem like it was aiding the Nick and the Eve thing because Bonnie didn't have anything to do with the Nick and the Eve storyline. So
Right. She just had to do with the Yancey storyline. Yeah,
yeah,
you're right. There were a few things that were kind of like this is the main story. There are a few things that are kind of operating out here, and it's like, were they necessary? No. Like, did we need them? No. It kind of there were things that kind of slowed the momentum of the story. Like, there were things that were kind of funny, like the weather girl being killed, and then Rose's sister filling in to be the weather girl. And that was, I mean, yes, her sister was funny, but it wasn't really relevant to the story otherwise. And they had her in the TV on the background, like when, at the end.
and even Heather on the weather, like she dies, and you think like, oh, it's another murder, and they just
Right.
kind of like forget about it entirely. I'm like, well, what was the point of it?
Right. It's like, what was
Like
the
you didn't
point of
need this
that?
at
And
all.
then, I mean, like, although it was funny, the stuff with Rose's family, like, was that needed?
Right.
Everything with her sister, everything with him meeting the family. Like, it was enjoyable, don't get me wrong, but it just didn't move the story anywhere for me.
Especially by the time you get to the end and Rosa goes off on her own
Yeah.
and she goes to find herself. It's like, well, if she was going to do that anyway, then what was the point of seeking her family's approval in the first place? If she was kind of looking to do something different anyway, well, what was the point of winning the family's approval?
Yeah. And for me, I mean, I don't know if people feel differently about this. Let us know in the comments if you do. But the
Tell us why
whole
you mad.
yeah, the whole Dragon Queen thing, like, I'm sorry, but it didn't need to take up that much time in the story.
No.
Like I understand
Yeah.
that like yes, they had to establish like who Egg is and the fact that he worked for Nick and Eve. Yes, there was like a little bit of a thing going on with the Dragon Queen and Neville and the freaking monkey. I mean, that's why it's called Bad Monkey, I guess.
Driggs.
But it's like, why did we need to know about Gracie's relationship with Egg? And why did we need to know about the Dragon Queen's journey of self-discovery and questioning? Like,
Yeah.
why is that important with Nick and Eve? Like, I understand how the end was important because I mean, it was really looking like she was going to kill Eve, and then Eve kind of turned around and got her. So I mean, I understand like that was relevant for that, but like, did we need to see the whole elaboration of the Dragon Queen's life story was that necessary?
No, her seeking, her like estranged relationship with her mother who was deceased, and the little girl that was like in the beginning and the didn't see her till the very end, and like
Yes.
the Yaya thing obviously was very warming, but Yaya, like, not to the same degree as Bonnie, but in a similar sense, didn't have anything to do with the main of the story. So it's like even
Yeah.
Yaya is kind of like, okay, this woman is a very comforting figure in the show, but it doesn't have anything to do with the story.
She has no interactions with the other characters.
Any of them.
And yeah.
Not even Neville. Not even Neville. I don't think.
And like, I don't know if like this is just me, but like I'm not a dialect coach or anything, but well, so we know that Jodie Turner Smith is not really from an island or anything. So she's putting on this
That was
accent.
fake.
That was fake. Yeah, and I kind of felt like it was like not great of an accent. Like it almost felt like they were trying to do like a fake Jamaican accent or something for me.
It was very exaggerated.
Yeah, it was very
Yeah.
exaggerated, almost to a point where it was just like, it's almost like they're like, I don't want to say making fun of the island, but you know, like because it was so played up.
Yeah, that stuff I don't want to say necessarily bothers me because at least if it's consistent with Hollywood Hollywood's typical caricature,
Hollywood.
Hollyweird.
I was literally just gonna say that.
Um, as long as it keeps up with their typical caricature of certain cultures and dialects, then it doesn't actually bother me because at least it's consistent, even though it's completely inaccurate. At least it's consistent. Because like, unless I've been to the island they're depicting and I know what people really sound like in their own culture, like I have nothing IRL to compare it to.
Well,
But at least I can compare it to the Hollywood's I don't want to say caricature again, but Hollywood's caricature
portrayal or
portray. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, at least it's consistent to Hollywood's portrayal, even if it's not the reality.
yeah, I mean, I was kind of, you know, when she would speak and then she had like gold teeth or something, or I don't know.
Have the gold tooth. I was like,
And
really?
so it's just like it was so exaggerated, and then like hearing somebody like Neville speak, like it seemed like his was legit. I don't know if he really is from that area, but he seemed a lot more legit to me, and hers just seemed very exaggerated. Maybe it's just because she's supposed to be the like kind of eccentric and this weird dragon queen lady.
Yeah, and I mean, tell me if I'm off base here. Like Neville's accent seemed like it almost had a bit of a uh, British um influence on it as
Yeah,
well, and that to me that would make sense because we think islands and what was colonized and who colonized
right.
them. So to me that would think that that would be more historically accurate. And like you said, that maybe his is more legit. Maybe that's his real background.
Yeah, I don't know. It just it did sort of her accent was sort of a caricature of what someone from the island speaks like to me.
Yeah, yeah. Which again, like it depends on. I 100% agree with that, and then the whether it bothers you, I think just depends on what you're comparing it to. Comparing it to real life, comparing it to Hollywood's typical BS.
Yeah, but I can't imagine that I'm the only one who was like annoyed with or mad at the accent. So if you were kind of like, yeah, that's a pretty bad fake accent, let us know.
Yeah, I had a couple WTF moments.
Yeah.
One of them was when Cody, Bonnie's little teenage love puppy, comes back into the show, and I'm thinking, like, okay, the feds are trying to go after her, and they don't know where she is. How is this kid she probably hasn't seen in 15 years, or
Right.
what, I don't know, 12, 15, 20, however long it's been. How does this kid know not only where she is, but that she's at Yancey's house? Like, there is
Right.
no establishment to him finding her. So that kind of bothered me a little bit.
I guess I guess I didn't really think about that, but yeah, that whole thing was like, I think it had been 10 years or something. I think she says that at
Mhm.
some point, but yeah, that whole thing was questionable, I guess, if you're, because it's not like she would like, it's not like Yancey was her ex-husband or something like that. Like she would have that residence established. So how the hell would he know to go there?
Yeah. I would that that one was that was a tell 'em why you mad. And then the other one was when when Yancey goes to Nick and Eve's property to confront them, he takes Neville's bike.
Mm.
And Neville obviously follows him because of the whole fishing rod situation with stabbing Nick. And I'm thinking to myself, like, how did Neville get there and get there so fast? Like, I mean, I guess he did have a car, but I don't think you saw them leave in the car. And and Yancey took Neville's bike, so it's like, how did Neville get there?
I mean, you get the sense that it's like across town, I guess, or like, is it? I don't want to say in the same neighborhood, but like it's in. This was when they were on the island, though, wasn't it?
Well, that was the other thing, because you have this sense that Nick and Eve are an andro, like they are staying off the mainland because, in theory, they're wanted criminals. Even though no one seems to believe Yancey's theory about that, and Nick's supposed to be dead. So you always think that they're on Andros, but like, other than their yacht, happily ever after, um, there's never a sense of, like, did they still have a property in the Keys?
I don't think so. I got the sense that yeah, I mean, I think it's just Neville kind of ran over there by foot because I mean, it seemed like, especially the setting where Gracie and Eve had their face off at the end, it seemed kind of like the back roads on that island are all like dirt roads, and it's just like everything is very kind of informal. So yeah, you would need a bike to travel because there's just not anything like paved. Like it's probably you
Yeah.
need like a durable vehicle if you're going to have a vehicle at all. So yeah, I guess I just kind of explained it away in my head like he just kind of ran over there.
He's got a hell of a pair of feet.
Yeah,
But then
I don't know.
that almost seems too convenient. Like, Yancey's bungalow is within walking running distance of this couple that he's in a that he's hell bent on exposing. I'm like, if he's that close, why didn't he just go over there at any point and try to
Yeah,
expose them? Like, oh, I know where their house is. It's walking distance. I can find it.
I don't know. I guess it implies that, yeah, if Yancey is borrowing Neville's bike, he needs it because it's a distance where it's better to
I don't
ride than on foot. But
I don't have any problem with that. I just want to know how Neville got there.
yeah, I don't know. He just ran as fast as his legs would carry him. Maybe he used to do track. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know.
Hashtag island life.
Yeah, so I mean, let's talk about the ending. So basically what we see is that Gracie tells Eve that the island's doesn't she kind of tell her that she's like cursed or something, like the island is going to destroy you, or the island's going to get you back for what you did or something like
Yeah,
that.
you're kind of like threw off the equilibrium of the universe or something, and the island demands a sacrifice now for
The
your
island
wrongdoing.
demands a sacrifice. That's what she said.
Yeah,
So then we see Eve just kind of like that was like shocking for me, the fact that Eve kind of lashes out and Gracie's basically like impaled. Like that just ugh.
and I'm thinking to myself like that is like at this point you've grown to hate Eve.
Oh yeah.
So to see like the look of fear and death in her eyes, and then the kind of universe robs the Dragon Queen of this moment of redemption, because this is a character that I know we said like it was the expansion of her arc was kind of
Right.
unnecessary, and I don't disagree with that, but I still kind of felt a little bit of I don't want to say connection, but I kind of
Well, we're supposed to, right? We're supposed to feel sad that she's just been killed. However, this was when she had just kind of realized that she was okay being the Dragon Queen and she was
yeah.
going to embrace it. So like we're supposed to feel sad about that.
And you're introduced a redemption
Yes.
aspect of her story as well, because
Hmm.
she's been involved with Nick and Eve. She's taken money and she thought she was doing right by Yaya, but Yaya rejected it. So, and Yaya is kind of almost trying to subtly remind her it's kind of like one of those "Am I good enough?"
Hmm.
themes. Yaya's trying to like subtly remind her like you are good enough. It's okay. And so like she finally comes to this realization that she is okay, and she seeks redemption for the wrong that Nick and Eve have done to the island on for their development project. And so like you're really rooting for her, and then you know lightning strikes, confusion happens. She falls. Eve pushes her. She's on this spike of a log on the ground, and you're just like, no, I hate
Yeah,
her.
yeah.
Why is she the one living, and why is this other person that I've been rooting for dead?
I know, but to me, it was like a step further when then we realized that, like, really, Nick, you could argue that yes, he was a bad person, but he had sort of an almost redeemable capability in the fact that he
Almost.
still cared about his daughter,
Mhm.
right? He still cared about his daughter and he, I think, regretted, not having a relationship with her or not being able to. And he was sort of resented Eve for not allowing him to have that relationship with her. So
He
that's
was
why
so
it
close.
it made it worse when Eve was the one to really be the bad guy in the end, because
Mhm.
she basically didn't shed a tear, pushes him in the water in his wheelchair. He can't swim with like one arm, and he dies. And she's like barely shedding a tear. So there's something wrong with her. Then she lies to Egg, gets on the yacht, and is like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna come back and get him or something." And then she meets her end, luckily, because of like I very much view it as a karmic thing. Like Gracie being right, the island will find you and you'll be a sacrifice. And she ends up making it to Portugal. She gets away and she starts choking, which is just something that's so stupid, and
I
then
know.
dies. Like,
And I felt like robbed as a viewer for the way her demise turned out, because Yancey gave up his quest to bring justice to her. You
mm,
know, when he's in the water and he's down the flashbacks, and everyone tell him, let go, let go, let go. And he
yeah,
gives that up. It's this very like selfless moment. And you're all pissed off because oh she's gonna get away and go be filthy rich somewhere, and then she dies from an accidental choking on a carrot and falling off a building. I felt so robbed that there was no justice for Yancey to get Eve, even though it would have been cliche as all hell, to get her and bring her to some form of justice. I felt
Yeah.
a little robbed there. Like, okay, she's dead, she's evil, and she's dead. All is right in the world, I suppose. But the way it happened, I like it. It doesn't feel like any kind of direct or indirect justice was done.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's like, someone hurts and murders your family, and then instead of going to trial, it's like they hang themselves in prison or something. It's just
Hmm.
there's no justice. But I think Yancey made a choice, and he just realized that was the best choice for him. And he just is like, you need to let go. Why are you doing this? Like, literally let go of your being dragged by in the water by a boat or something. So it's like he had to make that choice in that moment. And yeah, I mean, it was a freak accident, and it's not that satisfying. It's not justice.
And all for what? I mean, he gave that up, and in theory, to have the happier life. And Rosa goes off and leaves him anyway. So it's like,
Right.
at that point, why didn't you just try and swim and pull yourself under the boat? If that was going to happen.
But so there, it seems like they're really leaving things open for a season two. And as of like 2 days ago, they haven't renewed it for a season two. But there is also a second book. It's called Razor Girl. So I don't know what it's about, or if Rosa has any role in that or anything. But the way that it ended, it's exactly how it started, where his partner sits, I'm gonna butcher his name, so I'm not gonna try, but his partner sits down next to him when
Yeah.
he's looking at the water, and Yancey's kind of yammering away about how, oh, I'm a changed man now, I'm gonna do things differently. And his partner's like, hey, I got something in the car, do you want to check it out? And Yancey's like, did you listen to anything I said? Of course I don't want to check it out. Pfft, this guy.
Yeah.
And then
They
then
sit there in silence.
and then his partner's like, okay, well, let's just finish our drinks then. Yeah, that's cool. And then, of course it just takes a beat, and Yancey's like, oh, okay, you wanna go check that out?
Yeah, yeah,
So obviously it implies that it's another case or something. So if they renewed it, would you watch a second season?
It could well, it could have to that point. It could have, but I could also see that as just kind of like a full circle, tidy the story up, and then, like
Mm,
you're saying, Razor Girl or whatever it is, maybe the adaptation of the second book is a completely different story.
right. I mean,
I definitely.
they could go off book, like, like Game of Thrones did. Like, they could
Mhm.
maybe, they do a season two that's similar to the second book, and then that's the end of the book series. So if they decide to do a season three and four, they just go off book and write whatever they want.
Yeah, establish a what would that be called? Um, like I keep want to say side quest, a spinoff.
Oh
Establish a
yeah.
spinoff. And do it that way. I would definitely watch another one just because, especially to your point from the top of the show of all the guys' past comedic successes, Bill Lawrence's past comedic successes.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously, if nothing else, it would be entertaining. It would be funny.
Mm.
So I would definitely watch another one. I don't know that now the cogs are working. As much as I love Vince Vaughn, I don't know whether I would want to see him in the second one if it was a true spin-off, or if the second book was written as a different story. I don't know if I would want to necessarily see the same characters, like pick whatever, whether it's Rosa or whatever, pick whoever the focal point is of the second story, put her in place of that, and then build it from there. Like maybe the side character, maybe like Neville pops up, maybe your sister and the doofy pilot pop
Right.
up. Maybe,
That's kind of what I see. Like, if the second book potentially, or the second season, would be like another case, and obviously it wouldn't have the Dragon Queen, wouldn't have
no,
Neville,
yeah,
probably have a different setting, and like Rosa may or may not come back. But I mean, that's the nature of your you're wanting to know what happens with their relationship. She has to like find herself or whatever. So who knows what's going to happen. So I think that's what they want to do, is just leave it open to be like, okay, is there any interest in a second season? Could we potentially do this? And I think Bill Lawrence is the guy for the job. Everything he touches turns to gold. So why not?
And maybe it ends with her coming back to, like, maybe that's the only scene Vince Vaughn is in. The whole story is complete, and she comes back to seeing him on the porch. It's like, oh, hey, how are you?
Yeah. So we'll find out. So if they pick it up, we will cover it for you. So if you enjoy listening to our show, we would appreciate it if you gave us 5 stars and left us some love. Let us know what you think in the comments about any of the hot takes we said today. Also, make sure you follow along with us on Instagram and TikTok. He is Nutmeg, the number 2, Palmetto. I am Binge the Ginge, with dots between the words for Instagram, not for TikTok. Give us both follows on social. Stay tuned to the show on all of our platforms. For our lovely ginger faces, you have YouTube and Rumble. If you want to just listen to our sexy voices, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. So next up, episode 6, we are revisiting an old favorite. So I don't know if you remember, but our pilot episode of Red and Red, we covered, I believe it was the second half of season 2, or maybe it was the first half, of Lincoln Lawyer. So this time we'll be watching season 3, and the exciting thing is that we get it all at once. Thank you, Netflix. We're excited about that. So until the next Real Review, Red and Red signing out.
In less than an hour, aircraft from here will join others from around the world.
Don't act so surprised, Your Highness.
Hey guys, you ready to let the dogs out?
What? Do what?
No. Try not. Do. Or do not.
Because I don't want no scrubs.
Let the dogs out, like, who let the dogs out? Who?
Who brought this guy along?
I can go slow ahead. Come on down and chum some of this shit.
One more thing. Do me a favor. Don't go chasing waterfalls.
Mankind, that word should have new meaning for all of us today.
You're gonna need a bigger boat. Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?
I'll take care, all right? None but love for you. None but love for you.
Have any clue what's about to happen to him?
Oh, not a chance in hell. Good night.
Blow up! Peace! Fire, you son of a... You did it. You crazy son of a bitch, you did it.
Hey,
Not funny anymore. TLC references.
Still, nothing. I swear to you.
But as the day when the world declared in one voice, we will not go quietly into the night. We will not vanish without a fight. We're going to live on. We're going to survive. Today, we celebrate our Independence Day.